Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Last One Standing on the LoudMouth MMA Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kyle Steele. I was going to start by introducing, and then I was like, wait a minute, do this the right way. Joining me, per usual, we have Mr. Keith Schillen. Hello, Keith.
Hey, buddy. How you doing, man? Hey, I don't know if you saw the news, but the PFL cut half their roster today. I feel like that's motivation. We should cut half this roster. So I say start with Riley and Sean. And being that Patrick is only at halftime, he'll count as the half. And then just be me and you.
Well, there it is, buddy. I like your style here. All right, speaking of Patrick, we have Mr. Keith, where can we find you, please? Let us know where we can find you.
You can find me. I write for Sherdog and Cage Side Press, and you can follow me on Twitter, Keith Schillen MMA.
Wonderful. We also have Mr. Patrick Auger. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Please tell us where we can find you, good sir.
You can find me at Sherdog, The Body Lock, or Twitter at AllDayAuger, spelled A-U-G-E-R.
All day. That's a good one. We also have the shirtless wonder himself, all handlebarred and ready to go, Mr. Riley Contact. Hello, Riley.
Hey, Kyle. I just want the fans to know that you had a really, really, really interesting talk before this came on the air, and it didn't put anybody to sleep or anything like that.
And also joining us, the DFS sniper himself, we have Sean Ihaz. Hello, Sean.
You know, there's no way that the show could be just you and Keith, because it wouldn't be funny. It would just be angry, and we need something to lighten us up in these times.
Where can we find you? I'll give you a chance. I don't really care where to find Riley.
Oh, jeez. You can find me on Twitter at sniper_DFS, talking DraftKings and betting. And, you know, posting things, mean Photoshop things about Kyle because I'm bored in quarantine.
Well, there you go. Riley, where can we find you, sir?
I was just going to comment. I think this is the first week I've actually been asked where I'm found at, and it's usually at the liquor store. Combatpress.com. I have my own website, MMAintel.blog, and on Twitter, Big Riles MMA. Usually I don't have anything of novels to say, so that's all right.
Well, you know what I say. If you need a reliable news source, check a .blog. That's the first place you go to.
Hey, I was the only website that had pretty much the full PFL roster for this upcoming season that I know of.
Listen, Riley, I trust you. Unfortunately, this is audio, so the fans can't see you, so they don't understand why I trust you. But I trust you, and that's all there is to it.
We need video in the show. Like,
I know we do.
It has to happen.
We're getting there. We're getting baby steps. I could barely start the show off on a normal cadence. So let's get there, and then maybe we'll introduce video. How about that? All right. We all pretty much know the rules at this point. I believe this is the fourth episode. You get 45 seconds for the first round, which consists of 3 questions. You will get 60 seconds for the second round, which is 1 question. It'll be seeded. 1 verse 4, 2 verse 3, and then we have a final question. You will get a minute and a half. We have an automatic rebuttal rule on this iteration of the episode, so if you can't fit your entire answer in, don't worry about it. You will get a chance to come back around. So without further ado, let me pull up my questions here. It was up, and it disappeared. There it is. All right. Dana White held a call with UFC fighters. I posted what he said on Discord, so if you haven't checked that out, go do that real quick so you can have a good answer. But Dana White held a call with UFC fighters addressing the UFC's plan moving forward. Some topics, he hit on the meeting with Nevada's governor. Sorry, I had to pull the list up. He mentioned meeting with Nevada's governor, the fact that he's going to be keeping location secret. He reiterated to fighters they don't have to fight. Some of it seemed a bit PR-oriented. Some of it was just general information that he was trying to disseminate out. There's a good article written by a friend of the podcast, Nolan King. I know he was just recently on the MMA Takeover. He summarized the entire call, so you guys can go check that out. What was your number one takeaway from the call? That's the question. It's as simple as that. We will start with Riley, since for whatever reason, of all people to be the biggest in my screen, it's him, and I don't really know why I have the pleasure of that. So we will start with Riley. Riley, 45 seconds on the clock, sir.
All right, well, I can give you the answer to that last thing you said. It's because I'm a visual treat, and everyone knows. To get to your actual question, I think the biggest takeaway for me and the most important takeaway for me is that basically, if you don't want to fight or you don't want to risk it, you don't have to. This is a situation where you're, again, a consenting adult that says, hey, I don't want to fight until this is passed, so I'm not going to fight, etc. We already kind of saw it with Amanda Nunes, who's decided that she does not want to fight at the upcoming card until this passes over. Totally understand that. I'm not going to fault her for that. Am I disappointed? Yes. But again, she has the decision. If she wants to fight during this, pandemic, she has that right. If she doesn't want to, she can also do that. And then, not to bring in the non-MMA aspect of it, but that's, how we should be doing things right now. If you don't want to partake in society or going out in public, you shouldn't have to, but you shouldn't be stopped from doing everyday things yourself.
It brings up a good point, and I'll pivot over to Sean. Sean, 45 seconds before you go. How do you feel about the fact that most states are saying you can't even buy non-essential goods at stores? They're blocking off entire sections of stores, but we're telling fighters that it's their choice whether they do something or not. There's an interesting dichotomy there, and Riley hit that at the end. 45 seconds, sir.
Yeah, see, we're going to get away from the context of the question here. But in general, I think everyone should be working from home if possible, essential workers. But if you go to a store, buy whatever you want. You can, as long as you're safe and doing the right stuff. That's my take on it. That's for a different show, different episode. I want to keep this MMA related to me, and I'm going to be the angry one this time. Locations kept secret. We all had to pressure Dana White for where's 249 going to be? Where's it going to be? And he finally told us when we got screwed, and that's what happened. That's 100% why he wanted to keep it a secret. It's not going to happen again. It gives me hope for the upcoming card. There's a reason why we don't know where it is, because he made that mistake once. So people who are doubting 250 is going to happen for that reason, it's because he learned from 249. And the last thing that I'll hit on the rebuttal, Fight Island's real, guys. It's not just a wet dream. It's coming.
Mr. Keith Schillen, are you looking forward to Ariel Helwani tweeting out the location of the next fight card?
Let's be honest. The next location not going to matter because it's probably not going to happen anyways. My biggest takeaway is that the announcement that the fighters that were booked for the past fights that got canceled will be the first ones rebooked. Now, while obviously I think we would all say that is probably the most fair thing to do, if we take Dana at his word, which, take that how you want, that means Conor McGregor, John Jones, Israel Adesanya, Stipe Miocic, Dan Cormier, Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal, Colby Covington, Weili Zhang, going on and on. All those people are going to be set on the sidelines for a long time. Now, I expect the UFC to try to get those guys into fight. The low-level guys, the guys that weren't currently booked, who probably need the money most, like guys like Puna Soriano and Jack Marshman, those guys are going to be out for a really long time and will not make a lot of money.
45 seconds, Mr. Patrick.
So my biggest takeaway from it was that the managers and representatives for the fighters were not allowed on the call. I think that's a huge telling sign of the relationship between the UFC and the fighters and their managers specifically. I think it points to, again, keeping location secret. I think they probably were worried about managers or someone on a fighter's team or representation leaking that information. They're being extra cautious, but that is very revealing as to where the UFC stands with fighters management, which is huge and has ramifications down the line for their contract negotiations, for the way the businesses run, the employee versus contractor debate. The fact that you couldn't have management or team representation on when, fighters aren't employees, but they're treating them like employees, that's a big deal from a business perspective. Very telling.
Technology is failing me everywhere. I literally I couldn't get Skype to work. My phones are freaking out. They keep locking up on me. This is just a nightmare. Hopefully I can get the clock thing figured out. Rebuttals, again, automatic. We'll give you another 45 seconds. We started with Riley, so we'll start with you again. If there's anything you'd like to add, please do so.
Yeah, kind of bringing up with Patrick, who said that management and them weren't allowed on the phone. To be fair, it probably would have been like Malki Kawa and two other people, because I'm pretty sure he was representing over half the fighters that were on the upcoming card that were proposed, coming out of this. Add on the other, what other people were saying. I agree. I don't think they should be leaking information to the media just for it to get canceled. I think that the UFC should keep this tight to the chest. I think they would be very smart to keep it tight to the chest, because then you have people like Gavin Newsom, who called up Disney ESPN and got the card at Tachi Palace ended. So I think they'd be smart just to keep that on the down low. And like Sean says, the wet dream is coming true. I agree. Can't wait for Fight Island, and that's going to be great.
Sean?
So I'm just going to dig into something Keith said. I disagree with all these fighters who are going to be hurt. Dana White is still committed to having all these cards. Those people are going to get first dibs. He's going to have a ton of cards to fill. The Jack Marshmans and those guys, they'll get their fight. They'll get their money. I think if everything goes the way Dana White is hoping, which things could change, but we're going to be looking at cards twice a week for a while. He's going to need people to fill. I don't think it's going to be a thing where Jack Marshman can't get a paycheck and he wants to fight. There's going to be enough fights to be had if the UFC can pull off, the big if, pull off a way to host these fights. Please let that happen. Fight Island could be a whole new thing. Society's going to change from this. The normal is going to be new, and maybe it's the UFC's, their own venue. We thought T-Mobile Arena. Maybe it's Mortal Kombat Fight Island.
10 seconds.
Normal is going to be different after this, and I kind of say I like Dana White being proactive with this and trying to do something about it. I think not just for now, but in the future.
Keith?
All right, so yeah, he talks about having a lot of cards, and that very well could be the case, but the twice a week, I just don't think it's going to logistically work. Now, you do, I've covered Bellator back-to-back nights. It is a hard thing to do, and that's doing it once every, quarter or once a year. To do that over, multiple weeks in a row, I just think will work. Plus, they won't have a lot of locations. Not a lot of places are going to want them there based on what's going on. Now, I like the idea of this whole big secret, but let's be honest, it's not a reality. The UFC is not the Illuminati. You figure if they book a card and they have, say, 12 fights, that's 24 fighters who know where the location be. Plus, they all get a cornerman who'll probably know the information. Then, you can tell me ESPN's not going to know? They have to broadcast it, so they're going to know the location. Guys, you're telling me we could have 100 people know that no one's going to tell Ariel Juan, Brett Okamoto, or anybody in the media? Come on.
Patrick, 45 seconds.
Yeah, I'm with Keith that it's a pipe dream to think that the locations are going to stay secret forever. They're for sure going to get revealed, even if it's just a couple days before the fight. There's no way around that. In terms of putting on the cards, there's way too much money at stake with contracts going on. They will for sure put on the necessary 35 events they need to in the year. They'll probably end up doing similar types of things like they used to do with International Fight Week, with huge cards that'll be 3 cards in a row all in one weekend. They'll find a way to get it done. And in terms of, again, fighters not getting booked, they'll get booked because they're going to get the 35 cards, because there's $750 million at stake if they don't get 35 cards on. So there's no way that's not happening.
All right, I like it. Good round, gentlemen. Something that we have not discussed on this show, that's news that's come out, had to do with the home invasion of Anthony Smith. And the reason why we didn't talk about it is because there's not really a good question about it. But something relating to it has come up. So here's the question. In responding to the home invasion of Anthony Smith, John Jones tweeted, and I quote, "Glad Anthony is okay. No way dude would have left my house walking." The question is just simply this. Was that a cheap shot? Was it too far? We ask these. If it was a cheap shot, was it too far? If it wasn't a cheap shot, explain the context of the tweet. And if it wasn't too far, then explain. And I would like to hear kind of where your line is, if you have one. If you listen to Not Safe for Work podcast, you know where my line is, and it doesn't really exist. So I don't have a real dog in this fight. I'm just interested in opinions. I'll also say, to give some context, you can go look up this event, and you can actually see the guy that broke in to Anthony Smith's house at a neighbor's house that I believe he broke into, and it is eerie. I don't know if you guys on the panel have seen the footage, but it is terrifying. I mean, he has to be on some type of PCP or something. I mean, it is absolutely terrifying. So if you haven't got a chance to watch that, go look up the ring footage of the guy that does that. We will start with Sean for this question. Sean, per usual, 45 seconds on the clock.
This is weird because I'm going to go against my normal I hate John Jones brand here. It's one of those things at least it could be a shot. John is a piece of shit. He absolutely could be taking a shot. But if the way I'm reading it, I haven't heard the interview yet. It's one of those things you say in conversation. No way he would have left my house alive. And until you're in that situation, you don't know what you're going to do. Anthony Smith said as much. He's like, I hope that would have been my reaction, and I hope I would have had the same reaction. Now, granted, mine's going to be different. I'm going to get my gun, and I'm not going to fight the guy like Anthony Smith, which is insane. I don't think it was a cheap shot, and if it was, this is the MMA, and this you can act like this is what John Jones did that made him a bad guy. This is the line, really? This is what we're going to do it? John Jones making news, and I still don't care.
Mr. Keith.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a cheap shot. If it wasn't a cheap shot, he would have clarified that. He wouldn't have had a back and forth with Anthony Smith and being a dick to him over. Listen, remember, this isn't an MMA fight. He didn't get a training camp. He didn't watch film in this game. He didn't get to warm up. He got woken from a sound sleep to have to fight for his life, his wife's life, his children's life. The video shows that this guy is obviously insane, obviously on drugs. By Smith's description, it sounded like he was on either PCP or bath salts or maybe all of the above. Listen, this fight is in a house, not in an octagon. There's objects in the way, and for John to say stuff like, oh, he wouldn't have been leaving that way. Listen, he's got to wrestle this guy while also giving his wife instructions how to keep his kids safe. Now, John's going to talk about, and I'm going to say this later, but John's going to say, oh, yeah, I would have beat him up for us. Listen, has he ever hit someone with PCP and bath salts? They don't feel pain, and I'm going to kill it the next round.
Patrick.
I really don't think it was a cheap shot. I think it was John being John and making it about him. If you read the tweet, it's basically, hey, if that dude was here, I would have, I don't think it was a shot at Anthony at all. I think it's just him trying to take the spotlight and make it about him. That's all he's ever done. I don't understand. I think the follow-up tweet when Anthony got pissed and said some stuff and then John tweeted something not great that he deleted, but you can go find it out there. That was a cheap shot, but otherwise, no. I think it was just John being John. He's bored. He's quarantined. He just got arrested for, going out and getting drunk, going near strippers. What? He's just bored. I don't think it was a big deal. Yeah, I don't need it.
I don't need it. Good job.
I'm taking his 10 seconds.
No, stop it.
And the next one. Next one, I get his 10 seconds.
Well, I just want to start off by saying that John Jones is the greatest human being that's ever walked this planet. And if anybody disagrees with me, you're a bad person and should probably go to church. No, can we please stop it? This was not over the line. I know what he meant by it. And it's the same conversation I have when you have with your buddies at the bar. Oh, if he would have stepped up to me like that, I'd have cracked him one, It's the same thing. In this situation, this time being different, if he would have broken into my house and threatened my family, I would have killed him. I get what he's saying. I would say the same thing. I just had one last week of breaking and entering, and I would have had the same reaction as the guy who lives near me. My house is protected by Smith & Wesson. I would have shot the person, censored there. No. And here's the other thing. Anthony Smith is still a top contender in the light heavyweight division. It's a good way to stir the pot a little bit, although I don't think it was intentional, because Smith is maybe one fight away from getting another shot at John Jones.
All right, Sean, 45-second rebuttal.
I mean, I don't know if I need all the time here. I don't want to give it to Keith, though, so I should just talk nonsense for a second. No, we've hit on the points. John Jones, if you're not stir crazy at this point in quarantine, you are a stronger mental person than 99% of us, because I think we're all getting a little crazy here. And again, it's publicity. It's John Jones doing what John Jones does. And I just want to emphasize my point. If this is what made you think John Jones is a bad person, I don't know where you've been or what your line is, but it is a weird one. And I thought Riley was going to keep going further with
10 seconds.
You have meant, you need to, go to church thing if you think John Jones is a bad person, because I'm Jewish and I was offended.
Keith?
Well, I actually agree with Patrick that it is about John Jones, but that still doesn't mean it's not a cheap shot. It's both of them. And why he's saying, he would have been in worse shape. He's just trying to say, I'm more manly than Anthony Smith. That wouldn't have, he would have got beat up worse. Listen, Anthony Smith is fighting this guy. He's not a regular MMA fight. He has to control his hands because this guy already told him that he has a weapon. He could have a gun. He could have a knife. Like, he's fighting for his life. Now, these people who watch BJJ say, whoa, why didn't you choke him out? Well, because if he's not controlling his hands, he could get stabbed. And now also, like, what if he has a disease? He bites you or bleeds on you and all this. And then ultimately, the guy was saying that there was a second person in the house. So not only was he trying to hold this guy, but he was trying to give his wife instructions to keep his kids safe. But the biggest thing is John is going on with this guy. Anthony Smith did an interview talking about his little children being terrified, having to sleep in his own bed. And John Jones, it's just another bad look to say stupid stuff like that when you have little kids absolutely terrified in their own house. John Jones is a dickhead.
Love the visceral. Mr. Patrick?
I mean, I agree with Keith that John Jones is a dickhead, but again, I think it was like I think you're kind of, I don't know. I think he's making a correlation there that isn't quite there. I think it's, what happened with Anthony Smith was awful, and I'm glad he's okay, and I'm glad it worked out. Like, yeah, I've seen the footage. The guy's clearly on something, or it's just crazy. It's a whole thing. But in terms of what John did, he's just bored and, just trying to make it about himself, which I guess is a dick move, but it's John, so I don't know why you would expect anything less. That being said, I mean, the fact that this is the big news story,
10 seconds.
The fact that the big news story is John's taking a shot at Anthony instead of what happened to Anthony is just ridiculous. But that's just me.
Well, and again, it's news, and it's news that's been discussed on several podcasts. We just so happen to have a debate show, and there's really nothing to debate about that particular fight that took place. This is at least something that we can debate. So that's at least within the context of this show why we have not talked about it. Riley?
Well, I want to take a minute to actually disagree with Sean, Keith, and Patrick. I don't think he's a dickhead. I actually think he's great. So I just think that that's a cheap shot by those guys. They don't have any examples about anything bad John's ever done. And that's pretty much all I have to say, because there's nothing left to say in this boring, pointless, facile argument that we're having.
You're doing so good, too, man. Jesus.
We need video.
He was doing so good. All right, let's move on to our third and final question of the first round, and it's about my boy Frank Mir here. Frank Mir is now a free agent in the comment.
Hang on. Am I sorry, but am I way behind and missing a question? Because I thought that was our playoff question, and you skipped one. That sound crazy.
No, I have it on as number 3 on my end. Oh, JK. I did. I skipped
Get
a
a
question.
new host. Jesus.
I skipped the question.
Saving the show.
I skipped the question. Good job, buddy.
Davison Baker.
Good job, Sean. I skipped this question number 2. I went straight to 3. So here we go.
That.
Doesn't matter. If the UFC moves ahead with its plans to hold fights in May, some of this has changed, and I'll adjust the question accordingly. Will Bellator be forced to respond? Do you think it hurts Bellator if they don't hold fights until, say, June, July, while the UFC were to return to a normal schedule? Or if, say, someone like One were to pick things up and start doing shows on a regular basis as well? Do you think Bellator's hand is going to be forced to bring shows back, or do you think they're going to continue to kind of stay in the background and not worry about it, since they don't do all that many shows to begin with? So I'm interested in takes on that. We'll start with Keith. Keith, 45 seconds. This is the final question of the first round, so make it count.
Yeah, it hurts them because they're already trying to play catch up on the UFC, and that's when they have shows. They naturally have less shows, as you just mentioned. If they don't return, say, till June, that'll be 3 full months without a single show. Now, there has been Bellator fighters in the past, guys like Paul Daly, Javier Ayala, Juan Archuleta has gone on record saying they are not getting enough fights with Bellator. Locally, there's New England fighters, guys that like Vinicius de Jesus and Jesse Kozakowski, really good talents, who've gone on record said they won't sign with Bellator, and they've actually turned down contracts with Bellator because they know if they do, they'll be forced to only fight in Connecticut when they come to Egan's Son 1 or twice a year. So, yeah, it hurts, especially by the talent being mad at them.
We got Riley here, or Patrick, 45 seconds.
No, it doesn't hurt them at all. And no, they don't need to respond. That's not how Bellator's business model works. That's not how it's worked for the past, I don't know, since their inception. They're going to be fine. Viacom just merged with CBS. They're going to have CBS Sports. They're already showing reruns on CBS Sports coming up this weekend. They're going to be 100% okay. In terms of what Keith is talking about, that they'd still have to fight at those same locations because that's the only place that Bellator really contracts out to fight most times. They can sit back and do whatever they want. They just merged with CBS. They're going to end up on Showtime eventually. It's going to be a whole thing. No, it doesn't hurt them at all. Be safe, play the smart move, and just wait it out.
I keep wondering when Bellator was going to finally wind up on Showtime. We had to kind of see that coming, right? Riley?
I agree kind of with both on that. I think that it does hurt Bellator because, again, a large part of their revenue does come from TV contracts. And if you're not putting on fights, you're not getting that revenue. They don't really get a lot of live gate revenue. They do comp a lot of seats. But to kind of go off what Keith was saying, I do agree with him that it does hurt them from a fighter's perspective, because as he was saying, if you're only fighting twice or three times a year with Bellator, that's not enough, A, the cage time, and B, not enough opportunities for a paycheck. You've heard top prospects say that's why they don't sign with Bellator. It's going to eventually benefit the UFC, because what the Bellator was doing in the first place was actually hurting the UFC by taking chances on top prospects that weren't exactly proven yet and developing them. Now these top prospects are going to look at Bellator and be like, I don't want to sign there because I may not be getting enough cage experience. And
last but definitely not least, Sean.
In terms of in the eyes of MMA fans, I don't think this hurts them at all, because as I hit on earlier, there's going to be a new normal. The world's kind of on pause. I think they're not in with the mainstream enough now to where it's really going to hurt them. Now, when they get on Showtime and this merger comes through and they're doing other stuff, then there could be some kind of correlation. I think in terms of timing, it's not the worst timing in the world for there to be a pause. And I don't know enough about their financial situation. That was going to be my only point, is the only way if it hurts them is if it hurts their bottom line, which I'm not well versed enough in their Bellator business. I know about the merger. It seems like on the outside they're going to be fine. So I would assume it's not going to affect them at all. And that's the only way it would. I don't think in terms of status in the MMA community or recruiting, it's going to kill them in the long run. Short term, yes. Long run, no. This is a first of our lifetime type of thing, and we'll have to learn how to deal with it.
All right. Rebuttals. Keith, 45 seconds.
Yeah, Patrick's right. It won't hurt them financially, but you can talk about that business model in place. The business model might be in place, but that same business model puts them number 2 behind UFC by a mile. Now, you could say they just joined with CBS. Well, last time Scott Coker was with CBS, he had Strikeforce, was on CBS and Showtime, and that organization was bought by the UFC and folded. So just because they're with CBS doesn't mean it's like the golden ticket to the top. Now, you got to have your talent fight. Right now, Patricio Pitbull and Ryan Bader, the two of them combined, is holding up 4 out of the 9 weight classes for the title picture. So until you have your talent actually fighting, it's going to hurt your brand. And I actually think Riley made a great point about these young guys, the developmental contracts, they get these NCAA wrestlers right out of college. I think that's a great point that Riley made too.
Patrick?
So I would agree in terms of the fighters not fighting. That's the only possible way, is if they get upset with the promotion for not being allowed to fight. And I could see that a little bit. But in terms of the financials, it's completely different than their media rights contracts before, because they are owned by CBS. So unlike with the UFC and ESPN, where you have to perform so many events per year, it's different if ESPN owns the UFC, because really that's all coming out of the same bucket. Secondly, yes, Strikeforce did get bought out, which is that's a great thing. That means they became a huge property, and the UFC saw them as enough of a threat that they decided to buy it out. So that does mean that they're in a great position again, because they're going to end up on Showtime again. They're going to be with CBS again. They are 100% fine financial. Their live gate hasn't been great. Their viewership numbers are kind of they're going to come back rebranded. They're going to basically take this time to repackage, come out rebranded. They're going to be fine. It does not hurt them at all that they're not putting on events right now.
Riley.
Well, first, I want to agree with Keith. I really did make a great point earlier. Outside of that, what I will say, what Patrick just said is that, the live gates have been crappy, blah, blah, blah. I forgot exactly what he said because I was thinking of how great I was earlier. But here's the thing. people are saying when they're saying they miss the sports, they're saying they miss UFC. No one's thinking about Bellator right now. And the less you see of it, the less you're going to care about it, because really the big thing they care about, because the UFC is a global brand that has name recognition and strength. So, yeah, Bellator may not be affected by this as much, but the less people see of it, the less they're going to care about it anyways, because they're not going to remember it.
You hit that right on the buzzer, and I was trying to stop it. I was like, get ready to go warn you, and then good job. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, man, we're short on news because we have beat the living piss out of this one. Again, I just think I agree with Patrick. I think it's a good pause button and rebrand. I don't think they're going to lose that much. I think at some point the world is going to restart, and we'll see if we shut down again, but the world's going to restart and we're going to go from there. With Keith said, yeah, four of the 9 belts are held up. No, 9 of 9. They're all on pause. Who cares that 2 guys have 4 belts right now? No one is going to fight. And when they come back, we're going to knock out those guys are each going to fight on the first card. If I was betting them, if Bellator comes back in July, August, both of those guys are on the first card back. Like, it's just a full shutdown. I don't think it's the worst thing. Like, the UFC has the money and global recognition to be able to do this.
All righty. Good job, gents. Good show so far. I know we're digging in the bucket for some news, but this is what we're doing. Let me give you our seating. In the number 1 spot, we have Keith. In our number 2 spot, we have Patrick. In our number 3 spot, we have Riley. In our number 4 spot, we have Sean. So we have...
I suck this week.
Listen, for this week...
Clean your ears out, fella. I had a great day.
I'm just happy me and Riley aren't. I think he did that intentionally. I think he's still kissing up to Keith, so he put him as the 1 seed. Otherwise, Keith gets mad and yells, and he didn't want to have me and you face each other again.
This is a host issue. It's not you, Sean.
Let me give credit where credit is due. I will give credit. I fully expected the moment that Keith got kicked out of the finals, didn't make it to the finals last week. The moment that happened, I thought my phone was going to blow up. I was like, there's no way I'm not going to get 20 messages from Keith telling me how dumb I am and how he murdered everybody and whatever else. Never happened. I've talked to Keith several times since then. Never happened. So mad respect, Keith. Good job.
Listen,
you took it like a champ. You took it like a champ.
I went all the time, man. I don't need to be like Patrick and cry. They say, hey, he didn't answer the question. I clearly answered the question. I don't have to do any of that.
You didn't answer the question, and you went over every single time. Man, I'm not.
I answered the question. I have no way.
Show sucks.
No, let me just say this, Patrick. You're number 2 seed right now, guys. So I don't know what you're complaining about. You're the number 2 seed guy.
He's still bitter from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but you don't have to go against Keith. You get to pick where you go first or second and where you are. So pipe down. This is like you get a bye week. Just relax.
But Keith has shown me the louder and angrier I am, the higher I get. So I'm just emulating him.
You're doing a good job.
What's really messed up is I'm about to get tanked here because I know I am the 4th seed. I know I'm going out in the first round. Everybody go to sniper_DFS, and you'll see exactly why I'm about to get tanked out.
Patrick should be happy as a seed because everyone didn't even realize he was gone last week because he sucks.
This is wild.
I'm glad you don't notice me, Riley. That's a good thing. I don't want someone like you to ever notice I exist.
He's gonna roll by your house in a van that says free candy on it later.
All right, let's get to our 4th question here. Again, this is our second round. This is our sudden death before the finals. This will be Keith taking on Sean, Patrick taking on Riley. Keith, do you want to go first or second?
I'm going to go first this time.
Patrick, do you want to go first or second?
I'll go second.
All right, so when I kick it over to you guys, that's the order I'll go in. Let me read the question to everybody. If I can get to it again. Here we are. All right. Frank Mir is now a free agent in the commentating world. Should the UFC pick him up? If so, would he replace anyone in specific? What would be your desired booth involving him? And if not, where does he go? And do you generally find Frank Mir to be a good commentator? So we will start with Keith as a whole, correct?
I want to
Keith,
go first.
You're number 1 here, and followed by Sean. You get 1 minute and an automatic rebuttal. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he's a good commentator, what he did with WEC and the ACB. That said, the UFC won't sign him for two reasons. Number one, he already said that he still wants to fight out that one fight he has left with Bellator, so they're not going to sign him for that. And the other reason, they already have too many color commentators. They have Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier, Dominic Cruz, Dan Hardy, Paul Felder, and Michael Bisping. They have a hard enough time giving those guys jobs. Then you have guys on the roster like Kamaru Usman, Uriah Faber, Megan Anderson, who also have color commentary experience. And that's not even counting the people in the booth. Michelle Waterson, Tyrone Woodley, Anthony Smith, Rashad Evans, Calvin Gassler, Michael Chiesa. They have all worked the booth, and I'm sure they probably want a shot at getting in there. But listen, they let a more established guy like Jimmy Smith go. They're not going to bring in
10 seconds.
Frank Mir. Where should he go? He should go to one championship. Now, I'm actually going to give Sean the rest of my time, and I'm only going to use 5 seconds in my rebuttal because that's how I'm going to win.
Sean?
I really hate that you hit on the Jimmy Smith Jr. argument because that is a big part here. They let him go. But I'm going to go line by line. I'm going to make sure I answer the question against Keith. Okay. Should the UFC pick him up? Yeah, why not? I say pick him up because keep him away from your competition because otherwise he's probably going to end up in Bellator. If you can sign and pick him up and it's not a crazy amount of money, I have no problem keeping him away. To go off on what Keith said or disagree a little bit, you have a lot of people there in the booth, on the desk. I've been a color commentator for a ton of sports. I haven't done mixed martial arts yet, but I've done NCAA basketball, hockey, all that stuff. Booth and color commentating live is so different. Like you put Kamaru Usman, any of those guys in there, yeah, they want a shot. It's not the same. You have a teleprompter, you have time to digest notes as it's going on. Way, way, way different ballgame. And Frank Mir has done that. If so, should he replace anyone? Look, I'm not a big fan of Dan Hardy. I like Dan Hardy as a person, not as a commentator. I'd rather see Bisping on those European cards. But it's hard for me to argue that too hard when they let Jimmy Smith go. You absolutely have to have Jimmy Smith in there, quite honestly. Ideal. You know what? I'll save the rest of my time for the rebuttal, if you will, because I don't want to cut myself off. So Keith, go ahead and get your 5 seconds out of the way and kick it back to me.
All right, I'm going to do more than 5 seconds. I'm going to respond to his battle. So listen, if Frank Mir goes to somewhere else, and suddenly UFC is going to collapse because you want the competition to get Frank Mir in the commentary. That's going to really boost up Bellator. Where should Frank Mir go? They should go to one championship. That's the one commentary team that doesn't have a big known fighter on as a color commentary. That Frank Mir would be perfect. He says he wants to go to Japan. If you look at the report, that's where he says he wants to go. So that makes him. I mean, I know they're not in Japan, but that area, the Asian area. Okay, he mentioned Kamaru Usman being in the booth. Kamaru Usman has commentated color commentary. I mentioned that for CFFC. All right, so he has experience. And you know who else went from the booth? And he's absolutely fantastic? Michael Bisping. He went from the booth to color commentary. But here's how I win. Because if the UFC really they want to make a boost with their color commentary and the team, they want to add people to their broadcast. You bring back the trio that fans have been calling for forever. You put Phil Baroni back in the color commentary. You get Lisa Durgan and James Norman to do behind the scenes interviews. And ladies and gentlemen, the ratings will be up there with the NFL and NBA and all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how you punch yourself in the final show. And just like in chess, when you put down the king, just put down the king.
Yeah, so much for 5 seconds.
Go ahead, Shot.
Yeah, that's how we're going to win. Bring it back 30 years. To rebuttal on Keith, why would the UFC's not going to collapse if they don't get Frank Mir. But you don't think Dana White is a ruthless businessman? Keep him away. Keep away. Don't let somebody catch up a little bit by getting a name. Why? Absolutely. I would just, you sign him and you stick him in a booth in a desk somewhere and you got it. If they do sign Frank Mir, a part of the question, by the way, that Keith missed, what would be your desired booth? Give me John Anik. I want Bisping and Mir talking to each other. That's my ideal three-man booth. That is going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, he's got some experience, but you already got a logjam. Like Frank Mir is a bigger name than Kamaru Usman. You're making a big deal. Frank Mir wants one more fight. Usman's a champion. You're gonna bring him into color commentate? Like give me Anik, Bisping, and Frank Mir, and let Dana White be ruthless. And honestly, I would like to see him sign Mir and probably shelf him.
Yeah, they won't have Kamaru Usman come
Whoa,
because he's a champion.
whoa.
Hold on, no.
What's
They won't have him call. Hold on.
Don't ruin it. Don't ruin it, Keith.
Let me do this for Riley. Riley, jump at Sean. He says, "Hey, we don't let Kamaru Usman be the color
This doesn't
commentary."
count.
Daniel Cormier was the double champion doing color commentary. Like, are you kidding me? They don't care if the champion's doing commentary.
So let me
compare. You're comparing Cormier.
I heard my name. What happened?
Everyone, just let me keep control of this. Let me also.
We're going to see based on your who wins here. We're going to see what kind of control you have.
Let me give a brief there real quick. If you're in the business world at all, there's a really amazing book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. He followed around Carnegie and spent 50 years interviewing the most wealthiest people to ever exist, and the ruthless nature of your cabillionaires is wild. There's a story in there. I don't remember if it was Henry Ford or Carnegie himself. I don't remember. But they were literally giving away gasoline for free in order to destroy the competition. They were losing millions of dollars a day in our equivalent just to close down other businesses. That was all that they cared about. And then as soon as they closed businesses down, they jacked up prices. So I love the ruthless nature of men. And it would be funny to see Dana White just say, whatever, who cares? We'll just cite him, and then that's it. And then lock him up. Then he can't finish his fight at Bellator. We'll just, be done, because why not? All right, so, Patrick, you said you wanted to go second on this one, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so, Riley. I cannot take you serious.
That was really an interesting history lesson, Kyle. I'm sure nobody's sleeping that's listening to this. Should the UFC pick him up? I think the UFC should pick him up if they want to pick him up. Here's the one thing he does bring. He does bring experience. He has been a commentator for a while. A lot of the guys that Keith was talking about that they want to try their hand at it don't have as much experience. Now, if you want to give them one-off tryouts, et cetera, to give them the opportunity, that's fine. But, with Frank Mir, you have a guy with a track record. You have a guy with a roll of film, him talking on it and actually having that experience. If he doesn't go to the UFC, where should he go? I wanted to say PFL, but I actually like PFL's booth the way it is. So I'm actually going to agree with Kyle on one championship. Although Bellator, even if he doesn't re-sign as a fighter, re-signing as a commentator wouldn't be a bad thing either, because, again, I actually think Bellator needs the help in the booth. They kind of bore me, other than Goldberg being Mike Goldberg. So, but generally, in terms of is Frank Mir a good commentator, I like him, especially because he is so technical on the ground with jiu-jitsu. He does explain things well, so that's why I do enjoy listening to Frank Mir.
Patrick, before you go, I want to congratulate you on making it to the finals. So go ahead and give your answer.
Well, thanks for that. So yeah, I think they should pick him up. I like Frank Mir's commentary quite a bit, especially in ACB where he's been commentating most recently. I think that a lot of people have all mentioned, Jimmy Smith, but missed on the fact that Jimmy Smith said he was let go specifically so that they could use more fighters. So it makes sense that you'd have Mir come on and do that, because Mir is a former UFC fighter. Just like Chael, they could even ride the line like Chael and commentated for both Bellator and UFC. You never know. I'm sure Dana would be okay with that to some extent. In terms of, who I'd like to see him in a booth with, I'd like to see him a lot with, John Anik. I think that's a great lineup. I actually really like Sean's John Anik, Bisping, and Mir combo there. And then if he didn't go to UFC, I'd love to see him somewhere like, Ryzen or something like that. He's talked about Japan. I'd love to see him go to a smaller promotion like that. I think it would be great.
Riley, your rebuttal?
Oh, yeah, not a whole lot. This topic actually kind of bores me. And, I was willing to take a kamikaze shot at you because I am the perennial last place finisher every time. John Jones, may he, our savior, Lord. My fantasy booth for the UFC has nothing to do with Frank Mir. I'm just going to accept my place in last place since I insulted the host of this garbage show. My favorite three-man booth, because I'm the only person apparently that doesn't like John Anik. I think he's boring. I think he's monotonous, and I don't like him. My fantasy three-person booth, and I'll leave it at this: Joe Rogan, Eddie Bravo, Alex Jones, Infowars.com.
Patrick?
I guess
exacerbated pause.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, given how Alex Jones did on the Joe Rogan podcast, that would be a pretty hilarious commentary booth. I wouldn't, I'm gonna say with Riley, that's not a bad call. But yeah, I think Mir should come back. I think he should, I think him and Brock would be great. Him, Brock, and Joe. That'd be fun, especially since Brock can't really talk. That'd be an interesting thing. But otherwise, I think we've talked about the topic enough. So.
Well, you can have Rogan screaming and you can have Brock grunting. So between the two of those, we'll be able to try to figure out what's going on.
Can you imagine? Can seriously anyone imagine Alex Jones as a UFC commentator, like yelling absurd things and then talking about like super male vitality on sale on InfoWars?
I do want to exist in that world. All right, so very fun round. Thank you guys for bringing the heat. This is fantastic. I love this show. This is fantastic. I don't look forward to the judging piece of it, but when everybody makes it easy, then you literally have two people quit in their answers. So I don't know what you want me to do. So we have Keith moving on to the finals. And
whoa! How did I quit?
You
did it again. Another time, Keith literally did not answer the question.
What question did I answer? Hold on. Time out. These guys,
I don't think Patrick quit.
What question? Hold on. They did a question wrong. What question didn't I answer?
You weren't paying attention, Riley. I gave up.
Okay, no, go ahead. Why didn't tell us what?
You did not tell us your fantasy me or booth if the UFC signs.
Okay, but that wasn't the question. The question was...
It's in there. It's in.
No. If you say the UFC should sign him, I said they shouldn't. It's like that path. If yes, you go down this way. If no, you go that way. And I said you should go with Michael Chiavello in one championship. So I did answer it. Just like Patrick claimed that a couple weeks ago that I said.
You were just lucky I took a shot at Kyle on Twitter. That's it.
Listen, Kyle knows the Baroni, Durgan, Wormy. Before you even said a word, I put myself in the finals. He knows it.
That's where you went with Kyle.
Kyle, am I right or am I wrong? Be honest. Am I right or am I wrong?
Listen, I'm a sucker for James Wormy. I don't know what you want me to tell you. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
Keith definitely didn't answer the question. It definitely doesn't say if he goes somewhere else. It's just a separate question. What booth would you like to see?
I feel like Patrick 2 weeks ago. This is why he was so mad.
It's like this. It's like Patrick. If I ask a girl on a date, I say, hey, you want to go on a date? And she
says no.
She says no. My follow-up question isn't, well, where do you want to go? She said no.
But no. It doesn't work at all here.
If she says yes, where would you take her?
Yeah.
You're done. We get it.
But she said no.
Sorry, Sean.
I know, right? We got to do something about this judging or friendship or whatever's happening here.
Just don't care. just the less you care, the farther you'll get. Keeps proving that.
I'm not that mad, but now I'm going to take every shot I can on the way out the door.
And making it to the finals on the other side is Patrick. Hello.
Say Riley. Oh.
I feel robbed here. Who else would bring up Alex Jones on a UFC show? The man would be challenging fighters after the fights in the in-ring cage interviews. Are you kidding me? You're a fool, Kyle. And, I just don't like you very much.
Kyle, you should have sold that. You missed a big opportunity to be like, moving on to the finals, Riley Contact, and just skated past it. Huge missed opportunity.
I gotta agree. Kyle got robbed here. I don't know what's going on. This is terrible.
I'm just letting this happen the way that it is. I'm trying to maintain control. It's nearly impossible, but it is what it is. So
I'm the only guy that takes chances on this show.
And eventually it'll get you where you got to go. And
I said the color commentator be back is Phil Baroni. That's a chance.
Stop saying that. It's not
we
funny.
know. We heard you 8 times.
Yeah, we know you're old, Keith. We get it.
Yeah.
All right, Sean.
Yeah, you mean I'm not new. Actually, you know history of the sport. You mean that's what you mean?
Sean.
No, I mean you're old.
Sean and Riley, you're more than welcome to stay around. You don't have to, of course. Please let us know once again where to find you. Riley, we'll start with you.
Just watch the beginning of the show. I'm not saying it again.
Just leaning into that character. Sean, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'll take the full plug here. I'm a whore. That's fine. Follow me on Twitter at @sniper_DFS. And it's really disturbing. The only time I've won this show was when Keith was hosting. So I'm going to go take a cold shower and probably cry. And if Keith wins this, like, Kyle, I know you're in Dayton.
Anytime you need a good plug-in, you let me know, Sean, and we'll make it happen. All right.
Good luck, guys.
We have Keith versus Patrick. Again, congratulations to the both of you. We have a minute and a half for the final round here. It's one question. Again, automatic rebuttal. Let me plug some other shows that are on the network. Of course, we do not have You Cannot See What I'm Hearing or See What I'm Seeing. Other shows on the network I want to plug real quick. We have MMA Yesterday. Please check it out. We have MMA Takeover. Fantastic show involving another member of the panel. Eventually, we'd like to get Sean going on another show. We want to get Riley going on another show. I'm sure we want to get Patrick going on another show. We're going to have a lot of great shows on the network. We have breakdowns once that gets going again. We have a European show that is specifically for European MMA. We have the Not Safe for Work MMA show. Tune into the network, LoudMouth MMA Podcast Network, anywhere where you can listen to a podcast. You can find this one. If you just so happen to be listening to this one on like the Twitter card or something, you can go find the podcast anywhere you would normally listen to a podcast. So please do. Let's get to the final question. Keith, pick a number between 1 and 10.
My number is number 1, as in the 1 seed, which means I get to pick, so I'm going to go first.
Last time I did the number system.
I don't give a shit what you did last time. That's the rules. I go first.
That is the rules we set on week 1, so week 2.
Thank you. I don't know this nonsense.
Kyle, if I bully you too, can you change your mind? Because that rule's dumb. You should change it. And you go back to you already established the 1 to 10. You should totally do the 1 to 10.
Listen. I'm so
stand your ground, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
Stand your ground.
Kyle. Listen, Patrick's gonna cry anyway. Let him pick. If he wants to go first, second, I don't care. Let him pick.
The problem with the bullying aspect is when someone's right, they're right, and he is correct that those are
Kyle,
the rules. I was wrong.
Whatever he wants.
Patrick, do you want to go first or second?
I'll go second. I'll let Keith go first. That's fine.
There we go. Again, this is not a visual show, and there are lots of visuals going on. Sean, that was actually a very good drawing. I was very surprised by that. All right, let me pull up the final question here. This one is much more topical, and the question actually changed a little bit, so we will have to get to that. We have another UFC card set to be happening. It is set to take place on May 9th. This card, when I wrote the question, had 3 title fights booked. We've now lost one of those title fights, so there are 2 title fights booked now. Which title fight excites you the most of the 2? What non-title fight excites you the most? And then what percentage chance do you give this fight card in taking place? And if the card takes place the way it is now, let's assume the Nunes fight was still there. You can rate it based off of that and then subtract from the rating if you want to, and then give the card a rating. So, Keith, we're starting with you. 1.5 minutes on the clock, automatic rebuttal. I'll hit you up when there's 10 seconds left.
All right. I'm going to need a lot of time. Got to make sure I answer all 4 questions. All right. Listen, most exciting fight. It's a no-brainer. The main event, Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, 2 of the most exciting fighters in the history. Neither one of these guys have ever been in a boring fight. The winner gets to go against Khabib. We could possibly still get that dream fight with Tony Ferguson if that happens. I went into great length. Well, I still think it's a good stylistic matchup. I went to great length last week while Henry Cejudo shouldn't even be fighting Dominic Cruz. And then when they put Holly Holm in the interim title fight, which I'm sure she'll get against Felicia Spencer, that's not really that exciting. Most exciting prelim, I have to go with non-title fight, Francis Ngannou and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Between them two, they have one fight one win that was not a stoppage between the 2 of them. The winner will likely get a title shot after Stipe and Cormier does their trilogy. It's almost a guaranteed stoppage, and if not, Davis and Baker will shave his head or do something crazy. As far as what's my percentage, I'm gonna go with 20, which is higher than the 10% I gave UFC 249 when guys were saying in the 90s. Yeah, some states are going back to work slowly, allowing gyms and all this stuff. But
10 seconds.
This fight is 3 weeks after UFC 249. Why that was a PR nightmare, but why is ESPN and Disney suddenly going to be like, oh, 3 weeks later, sure, put on the show?
Patrick, 1.5 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, so, in terms of the title fights that are there, the obvious answer is Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. There's no doubt that is the title fight to watch for sure. Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz will be maybe an interesting, fun fight, but most exciting one, Ferguson versus Gaethje should be a brawl, should be going at it. We broke it down on a different episode at how we thought that fight would go. I think it's going to be a great fight, and it will probably still fight of the night. The fight that's not one of the title fights to look after, well, Keith brought up Rosenstruck versus Ngannou, that'll be fun, I guess, but it's going to be over in round 1, as he pointed out. So I don't know how exciting that'll be. I think Vicente Luque versus Nico Price is going to be a crazy fight with lots of spinning stuff and a great amount of bloodshed, and should be a great back and forth. And I don't know how that one's going to end. I think you can probably go all 3 rounds. They've both been in some crazy battles. They both had lots of fights of the nights, performance bonuses. I think it's going to be a banger. I think behind Ferguson and Gaethje, that's going to be the best fight on the card. In terms of rating percentage of if this fight card will happen or not, I'm going to go 50 or 60 because as Keith said, places are opening up. I think there's going to be a window of things opening up, and then if they get worse, they'll close up again. But right now, the window to open up is starting in the next week or 2.
10 seconds.
So I think it makes it's going to happen. Secondly, Dana White's part of Trump's task force and said in the call that there was information he knew that helped make him the decision to go forward with the May 9th card. So I think that's pretty obvious. He's got a good shot.
And a minute and a half rebuttal, Keith, starts now.
Well, I got to go. I mean, yeah, it should be a knockout between Ngannou and Rosenstruck, but saying that, Nico Price and Vicente Luque, which I actually agree is a good fight and fantastic fight, and probably will end a stoppage. Why? Because only one fight in Nico Price's history has ever not been a stoppage. So saying that I probably think it's going to go to stoppage, probably should watch Nico Price fights more because it's not going to, I'm sorry, saying it's going to go decision, not a stoppage. Like, let's be honest, all of his fights go to stoppages. The only thing, he never mentioned Holly Holm fight against Felicia Spencer. To glaze over a title fight like that he should deduct points for that. But I won't want to be accused of this, so I got to get the last question. How do I grade it? I mean, how could it not be an A? 3 title fights, 2 of the hardest hitters in the heavyweight division, and on the main card, a fantastic stylistic matchup between precision of Calvin Kattar versus the power of Jeremy Stephens. That's the main card. You go on to the prelims. The prelims have 3 former champions, a guy that holds every single, longevity record, and the guy who just got submission of the year. That's the prelims, plus Patrick Argus fight between Nico Price and Vicente Luque. You got fan favorites on the card like Alexei Oleinik,
10 seconds.
Jacare Sousa, Uriah Hall, Michelle Waterson. I mean, it's an absolutely fantastic one. How could it not be an A?
Patrick.
God, there's so many things wrong with Keith's response. All right, so Alexei Oleinik is a fan favorite? Are you kidding me? Where? In Russia? All right, anyway, that aside, I did watch Nico Price fights, and yes, he had one decision, but my main point about Ngannou versus Rosenstruck was that it's going to end in round 1. I would imagine even if Luque versus Price does go to a finish, it probably will go past round 1 or has more chance of it, so it's going to be more exciting, so that's another part of it. In terms of the glazing over the title fight of Holly Holm and Felicia Spencer, yeah, I did. Was I not supposed to? Was I supposed to give really? You're excited about that? I mean, that's interim title for what? Okay, all right. And in terms of rating the card, I guess I would also give it an A or a 9 out of 10. It does have a lot of great fights. I'm not super stoked about, some of the fights on there, but maybe only 1 or 2. The rest is very solid. Lots of name guys. Should be interesting. Should be fun. But I mean, yeah, what? I don't know what you're talking about, Keith, man. All right. Yeah, that's it.
Can I just ask 2 questions? No, I actually have 1 question.
Well, can you let me go? Just don't worry about it, because I want to keep going here. I think in my opinion, we are extremely neck and neck. So I would like to ask one more question, and within the construct of this question, I would like to extrapolate on something. I will also comment on. I assumed that Keith was being sarcastic and referencing the Holly Holm fight. I should verify, Keith, were you being sarcastic? Okay, yes. Okay, I just wanted to double check. I assumed that.
Was he being sarcastic about Alexei Oleinik being a fan favorite?
I don't think he was being sarcastic about that, but I think he was being sarcastic about the first.
Then how did I not win?
Okay. So
hold on.
All right.
Let me control this ship, please. Thank you. I would like to talk about the title fights themselves. Let's just say Holly Holm does jump in, and there's an interim title fight there. We have an interim title fight, obviously, at the helm, and then you have a very odd fight. It's not an interim fight, but it's an odd one with Henry Cejudo. Give me, Patrick, we'll start with you on this. Give me what the significance of any of those fights as far as, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Given the situation surrounding those fights happening, the fact that they're interim in the first place, and then the circumstances surrounding them, without really having camps, no gyms are open, no anything like that, how important do you think these fights are in the grand scheme of things, like extrapolating it out? For any of those, what's the least important? What's the most important as far as taking it serious as a fan, the result of that fight? The circumstances around these fights are so bizarre. They probably shouldn't really be happening. If we do push them into happening, that's great. I would love to watch fighting. But the circumstances surrounding the fights, we're just throwing stuff together at this point, is how I feel. There's no reason to not have Tony fight Khabib. They can fight. Khabib isn't injured. We're just forcing the fight because that's what we're doing. If Amanda Nunes can't fight, they can book the fight later, but they're probably not going to. They're probably going to try to make an interim fight. You have Henry Cejudo fighting Dominic Cruz, again, for no other reason other than you can't really get anybody else in there, so that's just what they're doing. So the circumstances surrounding these fights are very odd. So I would like to hear an argument as to the relevance of these fights on the grand scheme of the divisions.
I mean, you pretty much just answered your own question. I don't know what you want me to say here, but in terms of the relevance of the fights, they don't mean anything. No, they are literally, as you said, they are put together for the sake of putting them together. And in terms of, whether or not, if you did do Holm versus Spencer, yeah, the next one's going to get a crack at Nunes. Like, that's just so that they can say there's a title fight. Cejudo Cruz, yeah, that's great that they're going to have a title fight. And then another worthy contender is going to step up next in line. Whoever wins against Ferguson and Gaethje, that has the most implications, I guess, because you could have done Ferguson versus Khabib and then have Gaethje fight the winner. But again, you're just doing a round robin. In terms of significance, it's not that much significant at all. I mean, and then for context, you already answered the entire thing. So rather than restate what you said, I'm just, going to stop there.
Keith, do you have a difference of opinion?
Yeah, so first of all, I got to respond to some of the things he said that was wrong. So he says that Alexei Oleinik is not a fan favorite. Go to Twitter when he gets an Ezekiel choke. It absolutely goes crazy. People cheering for this guy to get the one submission that seems to nobody else can do it, but he can do it like a million times. So yeah, if he gets an Ezekiel choke on Fabricio Verdun, a former world champion jiu-jitsu, Twitter will blow up. Don't say it won't. And there's 144.5 million people in Russia. I think he's got a lot of fans. All right. Now, as far as what's significant, the significance of the Ferguson-Gaethje fight is what they're risking. Tony Ferguson is risking the dream fight that we've been all craving forever, probably the biggest dream fight since Chuck Liddell, Vanderlei Silva, we called for years, in Khabib Nurmagomedov, if he loses to Tony Ferguson. Justin Gaethje is risking what Ariel Helwani put out when he announced the Ferguson Gaethje fight, was that they were gonna book him against Conor McGregor. That he's actually risking that fight. So both guys are risking. As far as Cejudo and Cruz, and obviously I'm only joking about Holly Holm because I know Kyle always makes jokes about Holm getting tons of title fights. I always listen to the Not Safe for Work show. Anyways, Cejudo and Cruz. What's on the line? For Cejudo, it's his legacy. Think about this. He beat Demetrius Johnson, the greatest flyweight ever. He became a double champ against TJ Dillashaw. I'm sorry, beat TJ Dillashaw. Then became the double champ against Marlon Moraes. And then now he can take out Dominic Cruz, the greatest one in the division. So when he finishes his career, he can say, I took out the best flyweight and the best bantamweight ever. So that's what's in now. What's on the line for Dominic Cruz? His legacy. Imagine if he comes back a second time after a huge layoff and wins the belt again. So yeah, there's a lot on the line for these guys. But here's my final question, because Patrick kept going on about first round, second round, if it goes to second round or third round, it's definitely going to be more exciting. Yeah, what was more exciting? Israel Adesanya versus Joe Romero that went 5 rounds, or Travis Brown and Andrei Arlovski that went 1 round? I
mean, obviously Travis Brown, but
so Nagano,
right? No, right. But
now, Nagano catching an uppercut on Alistair Overeem and hitting him into a freaking other realm. That wasn't exciting. That wasn't exciting.
What was more exciting? Israel Adesanya versus Kevin Gastelum, or Francis Ngannou versus Alistair Overeem? That's a
pretty,
better comparison.
I don't know. It's pretty damn close.
Really? Okay.
You're telling me Alistair Overeem getting knocked uppercut into the next, like.
It was a great highlight. Was it a great fight?
It was pretty damn exciting.
God, Kyle, please tell me that
There's
I
no
won this.
way you won. I just murdered you. Your response was, well, Kyle, that was a pretty good response. Yeah, there's nothing on the line.
Okay. I love this show. Everyone did fantastic. Our winner for this week, we have Mr. Patrick Auger. Sir, you are crowned winner. There are a couple reasons for it I won't get into. Keith, where can we find you?
Absolutely get into it. You get into it. 'Cause 2 weeks ago, you were saying, "Oh, is he mad at me?"
Keith,
That's
where
why.
can we find? That's not what it is. Keith, can we find you?
Listen. I'm not gonna cry. We all know I won. He didn't even answer that.
You're already crying.
He didn't even answer the question. Listen, that was the worst decision since I broke into Anthony Smith's house.
Where can we find you, Keith?
You can find me at Keith Schillen MMA, but you can find me on like pretty much every show on the LoudMouth MMA Podcast Network because I am the face of the LoudMouth MMA Podcast Network.
We are a two.
And Patrick, you can also let us know where to find you, but you also get 30 seconds to rant about whatever you want to rant about.
So you can find me again at All Day Auger on Twitter or at Sherdog or Bodylock. But I'm just happy that finally, some sense of logic actually had some say on this show, because Keith half the time either just rants way longer than he's supposed to, doesn't answer the questions, contradicts himself, or just yells until he gets what he wants. So I'm glad that finally, Kyle, I'm proud of you today for stepping up and doing the right thing and, letting logic dictate who wins rather than just Keith crying until he gets his way. Good job. Way to stand up to the bully, man. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, Dad. That's it. That's the show. It was a blast. Check it out each and every week. It's pretty much this exciting every week. This is not an anomaly. So we will see you guys next week. Make sure to tune in. Tell your friends.